but we're going to be okay. I really know that. And when I did that, I felt this feeling of peace just like start in my head and like just flood my body.
Hey there, Mama. Welcome to the Marvelous Moms Club podcast. I'm Kirsten Tyrell, and I am the host of this awesome podcast where I get to sit down with moms from all over the world from various walks of life to share their stories of inspiration, knowledge, and all kinds of good stuff to remind you what a truly marvelous mom you are. So sit back and relax, or plug your headphones in and keep doing whatever you're doing, and enjoy today's episode of the Marvelous Moms Club. Hey, Marvelous Moms. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm excited for this one. I've been waiting to do this one for a really long time. I'm interviewing Beth Walburger today, who I met I feel like a long time ago. I think we knew each other in heaven or something.
Right.
But really, we've only known each other for less than a year. We met on Periscope. We've met in real life, thank goodness. I've been able to give you a hug. But welcome to the podcast. This is a new experience for both of us to do together. So thanks for being here.
Nice. Well, I'm excited. Like I told you, when you texted me it was time, I got really nervous. But now, seeing your face, it's better. Yeah.
Right? We're just having a talk between friends, which should happen more often.
Right.
Really should. Because while we met in the heyday of Periscope, we were able to see each other as often as the other one wanted to broadcast. And now it's snippets here and there on Snapchat
Right.
Those were such fun times, though. And it's crazy how you can feel so close to people in such a quick way by them just sending, like for you. So everybody listening, first of all, let me just tell you about Beth, or let Beth tell you about herself. She's a mom of 5, and she is an amazing baker, amazing cake maker. Is that the right term for it? Cake maker?
Sure. Yes.
And so when I met you on Periscope, it was you propping the phone up in your kitchen, baking all kinds of delicious things, and just having a conversation as though we were like sitting in your kitchen. And I think that's what made everybody instantly fall in love with you and feel like we were your best friend. I think that's so fun.
That's nice.
Isn't that like the ultimate friendship, though, when you can just sit there and go about your life while still talking to your friend and they don't care that you're not like 100%?
Most of my friends do that. They come and sit at my counter and just are here while I do my stuff. I love it. I love having people come over and just feel like, for one thing, I need a bigger kitchen so I can have more people come over. But still, no, I love that. That's what I like to do. Just have people sitting and talking to me and probably entertaining me while I'm doing all my grunt work. But
So tell everybody about your kids, how old they are. I mentioned that you have 5 of them. So tell us about your kids.
My oldest is 17 and he's a junior. Then I have a freshman in high school, my only girl, Natalie. She's 14. And then I have Jack, who's 12. And then I have Ben, who is 9. He's almost 10. And Ty, who is 8.
Wow.
So Ben and Ty are 18 months apart. And so I always wanted, hey, no, Tula, no. Sorry.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
Yes, 2 dogs. We have a canine companion for Ben. He has a service dog. And then I have just a rescue we got so the other kids could have a dog to cuddle with.
That's so fun.
So, yeah.
So, okay, so you have the dogs and you also have chickens. Right?
Yes.
I remember seeing on Snapchat or Periscope, I can't remember which anymore, you guys building the chicken coop.
Yes, and we finally built, this is our 4th set of chickens, and we used to have them in our play structure in the sandbox. We made it into a chicken coop. But then we would have to let them out during the day and take them over to the side yard and fence them in and put them away at night. So finally, with this set, we built a coop. But I have to show you really quick. When we got chickens, I thought it was going to be this awesome birthday gift for my husband because he loves eggs. That's his favorite food. He loves eggs. And we've talked about it. It wasn't like it was nothing we had never talked about before. But the kids and I went and got 3 chicks. We were so excited. We hid them in the garage. And the next morning, we brought them out for his birthday, and he was so mad. He left for work an hour early. The kids are all crying and like, oh, Dad doesn't want our chickens. And
my God.
He's like, do we not have enough on our plate? We had these 2 my youngest boys have their special needs. He was just like, do we not have enough going on? But then later he called and he said, I'm sorry. He apologized. Like, okay, well, if we're going to have 3, we may as well get 5. So we went and got 2 more. So he got over it, but it was not the birthday present I thought it would be. It wasn't a surprise. He doesn't like surprises, I'm realizing. So
yeah. You learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
But now, okay, so tell me, this is so interesting to me because we go through so many eggs too. How many eggs do 5 chickens produce for you?
They don't lay for like 8 months, right? You have
What?
to wait a long time. You get your
Yeah.
chicks and then you wait. And then they lay one a day
Okay.
for a couple of years, for about a little over 2 years. And then they slow down, and that's usually when we'll give them away to someone who has property, and then we'll get a new set. So I don't use them for my baking. And people are always like, "Oh, that's perfect for your cakes." I'm like, "No, I don't waste the chicken eggs on cakes."
We eat
So I
those.
buy a ton of eggs. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I'm sure
you
you
know.
do. I remember seeing one of your Periscopes. How much butter do you feel like you buy in a week to make all those
Oh,
cakes?
oh. I always have, I mean, if I don't have like two of the 4 packs in my fridge at all times, I don't even know. Probably, depending on the week, I go through 8 to 20 pounds of butter.
Oh my
We,
goodness.
I use a lot because my
Yeah.
frosting uses a lot, and then for the other stuff. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, if you ever need butter, call me. I have some.
Yeah, but you need
Yeah.
it sounds
Yeah.
like.
I have a cube. You can borrow a cube. Yeah.
That's the extent
Maybe
of it.
not a pound. Yeah.
So let's talk about how the cake business started. When did you start doing that? Was it just kind of a hobby turned
Okay.
quasi business?
Well, I'm going to give you a little background before and tell you how that kind of came about.
Yeah, please do.
So, when we had our 3 kids, well, I'm the fifth in a family of 12 children.
Wow.
So I had a lot of brothers and sisters. We had lots of babies in my house. I loved it. I always thought it was really neat that I grew up in a family like that.
Yeah.
And so when I had 3 kids, Scott, Natalie, and Jack, and Jack was about 2.5. He was the youngest. And I kind of laugh now when I think about it because I should have known better than to even have this thought cross my mind. But I really kind of thought, okay, this isn't hard. This is good. I got this. This is great.
Oh no, I just had that thought yesterday.
Yeah.
Oh no.
No, don't let me scare you. But see, like you're at a good age too, though. Your kids are getting a little more, but that it wasn't just one. Maybe it's kind of my attitude of just like this is good. I've got this. Three isn't that hard, and then we found out we were pregnant. Well, we'd been trying to get pregnant, and for some reason, my other kids are all right about 2 years apart. And for some reason, with this fourth baby, we kept thinking, oh, well, is it time? And not quite yet. We kind of just felt we waited a little bit longer. So there's actually a 3-year gap between Jack and Ben. And when I was pregnant with Ben, everything was great. I didn't have any complications until towards the end. I had extra amniotic fluid, and we couldn't figure out what that meant. So we went and did like the higher level ultrasounds, and we couldn't see anything wrong with this baby, right? So we just thought, well, it's just extra amniotic fluid. And so we had him here in Folsom where we live, and we actually had him at a hospital very close to our home, like a mile away. So it was very convenient. But at the time, we didn't realize that this hospital, well, we probably knew and probably didn't even care. My other kids I had naturally without drugs. Like that was kind of my thing. I just loved childbirth. I thought it was my marathon because I'll never run, but I might have a baby that way,
Yeah.
But so we weren't worried about a NICU or any of that. So when Ben was born, and I had a natural delivery with him, and they handed him to me, and he just sounded funny. Like you hear your baby's cry. He just sounded like he was kind of gurgling, like he was a little bit underwater, like he couldn't get but even then, he was big. He was 8 pounds, 12 ounces. He was fat and everything. And my husband later, I didn't notice this, but he could hear the respiratory therapist counting because he counts to make sure there's not too much time goes by before the baby takes a good breath. And pretty quickly after they had handed him to me, they came and took him and whisked him away. And he couldn't breathe because we found out later he couldn't swallow. He couldn't even swallow his own saliva, and they had to whisk him into the next room where we could still see him, but they had oxygen and all kinds of stuff all over him. And we were just shocked, like what just happened? What's going on here? And within about, actually, I can't remember how long, but pretty quickly after he was born, they loaded him up into a little baby ambulance, incubator. And I remember them rolling him past the delivery room where I was still just kind of, I couldn't get up yet. I just had a baby. They were making me stay there. So they had to take him to another hospital in another city in San Juan. And so my husband went with Ben and followed him there and slept outside the NICU there because you can't go in the NICU at night. They close it. So Jonathan slept outside on the bench waiting, and I stayed at the hospital for a couple hours. Because they make you, they want you to stay, and it was probably wise. I went and laid down, slept for a few hours, and then had a friend come get me and drove over to where Ben was at the NICU. And we did not know what was going on. Nobody knew what was wrong with him. He's this huge, fat baby in the NICU with these tiny, like, preemies, and he just looked like a pig, in there. And and he would be fine, and then all of a sudden not be able to breathe. So what we didn't realize at the time was that he had a core muscle weakness, and it caused his esophagus, not his esophagus, his trachea to collapse very easily, and he couldn't get a good breath. So he'd be okay, and all of a sudden not. And they did all these kinds of tests. They checked his brain. The first time I was able to hold him was 3 days after he was born. And it was only because, we were so panicked, like this was so new to us. And my friend came to visit, and she's like, no, that's your baby. You tell them you want to hold that baby. And they were doing a test where they put the wires all over his head so they can check something about his brain. And that's when I finally got to hold him. So they put him on me while they were doing the test. And what I remember vividly about those 3 days, because he was only there for 3 days, and then they transferred him. Once they realized he had something going on with his swallow and his throat, they transferred him to another hospital that had ENT specialists and all that. So, but I remember so vividly how wrong it felt, like physically, like wrong to walk out of that hospital every night, leaving him there, and I had well-meaning friends who were like, well, at least you're getting a good night's sleep. And I was like,
I don't want to sleep. I want my baby.
And they meant well, but it kind of taught me a little bit. Like, I try not to say, at least, and just say, I'm sorry that's happening to you, even though, anyway. But so kind of making that a long drawn out story, but we still don't have a diagnosis for him. Really? We still don't know what caused it. But when he was 7 weeks old, we finally made the decision after weeks of him being just completely fine and then coding. Every time we were go to the cafeteria, we would listen for them to call a code blue, because we knew that could possibly be Ben. We'd listen to what floor it was called on and where, and then, okay, that's not him. Oh, it's him. So we'd run back up because they were having to help him breathe again. So he spent time, so he had a feeding tube because we couldn't feed him. So he had just a feeding tube that went through his nose, and he was getting his nutrition that way. And I pumped for him, and I'm not saying this is anything anybody else should do, and looking back, I kind of can't believe I did it, but I pumped for a year for him because I could never nurse him, and it was so sad to me. I love nursing my kids, and it was so sad. But maybe it was also one of those things where everything was so out of my control. I felt like, okay, this is one thing I can do. Yeah. So I'd wake up every 4 hours. I just did 4 hours off. And then, so when he was 7 weeks old, we made the decision to give him a trach so that he would have a safe airway and a feeding tube. And we were just going to do the feeding tube. We kept thinking, no, he doesn't need a trach. I remember when the nurse showed us the little doll with the trach, I was just like, no, he will know. That just seemed so horrible. Mm-hmm. And but the night before his surgery to just get the feeding tube, he coded 2 times. And I was like, okay, Heavenly Father, I get it. I hear you. He needs to breathe. Too bad he has to breathe all the time. If he just needed to breathe some of the time, it would have been okay. So,
fortunately, we always need air.
Right. So at 7 weeks, he got his. He got his trach and his feeding tube, and so that kind of started our journey. He's almost 10 now, and that kind of started our journey of being a different kind of family where we weren't as mobile. We weren't as, we used to love to take the kids camping and just do different things, and that all of a sudden we weren't able to do anymore. And when Ben was 6 months old, he had a bad cold, and we had been in and out of the hospital all this time, and worked with the nurses, worked with all the, had, direct line to call people we needed to call, and felt like we kind of had this, kind of knew what we were doing and managing his care. But he was sick for about a week, and he had a really bad cold. But I was watching his diapers, watching his feedings, all this stuff. And I would have taken him in anytime I had the feeling to take him in. I kept watching him, kind of waiting for the feeling to take him in. But it wasn't until Jonathan said, you go to church. You go, because you've been home all week. Why don't you go to church? And when I was at church, I started having this kind of sinking feeling like, yeah, he probably needs to go in. And when I got home and looked at him, I was like, yes. Like, it's almost like I had to walk away from him and come back and go, yeah, he looks really bad today. So my husband loaded up all the kids. He dropped me off at the ER, and then just went back home with the older 3 kids, because this is kind of our drill. We did this. He had been in and out a lot of times.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about having a trach is that when you go to the ER, you're moved to the front of the line right away. Like, they don't make you wait. So I knew we'd be able to get in right away. And but we took him in. I thought, okay, he probably has a little bit of pneumonia or something's going on. But we took him in, and the nurse right away wanted to get a line in, get him some fluids, and she tried and she couldn't get it. Then another nurse came in, and pretty soon there were 6 nurses and nobody could get a line in. Then they moved him into a different room. Instead of like a little side emergency room, they moved him into the main one where there's a big table. And it was surreal. It was happening really, really fast. And all of a sudden he was surrounded by doctors, and they couldn't get a line in. And he was so little. And after being sick for a week, he was even littler. And he was just limp, and I'm because I'm used to the drill, I was standing back, like trying to be out of their way. But, I could see him. But when the nurse said, hey, Mom, now it still makes me emotional, even though it's so long ago. But she said, Mom, come in and hold his hand. I was like, oh, crap. Something is wrong. Or they would not tell me to get in the way and get in there and hold his hand. And the whole time I had been like, Ben, talking to him. And then she's like, is there anybody we can call? And I'm like, yeah, call my husband. And so then I started to like I was kind of panicking all along, but all of a sudden it was like real, like it felt like this. And so in my head, like my body was kind of stone, but in my head I'm like screaming, like kind of praying, let him get a line and help him get a line and help get a line, over and over and over and over. Mm-hmm. And he stopped. He coded one time, and it was because they tried to put it's called an IO. I don't know if you've heard of those, but it's like a hollow needle that they push directly into the bone so that they can get fluids into your bone marrow. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't under anesthesia. He wasn't under anything. So they pushed that into his leg, and he coded. And so he coded once. That was the first time. And I was standing there thinking, it's almost like time is like frozen in a weird way. And I said to Heavenly Father, Heavenly Father, and all of a sudden I was like, in my mind, the screaming praying stopped, like the screeching prayer stopped. I said, Heavenly Father, whatever happens, I know we will be okay. And I trust you. And I kind of really had to, in my mind, just go, okay, I know. And that meant to me, okay, I know he might die, but we're going to be okay. I really know that. And when I did that, I felt this feeling of peace just like start in my head and like just flood my body. And that was when I, that, how you hear like they talk about Christ as a Prince of Peace. Mm-hmm. That to me became like literal. And so he didn't die, as you may have already guessed. Yep. He's still alive. But over that night, he coded 4 more times, once in emergency surgery, 2 times up in the room. And it was like a symphony in a weird way. I stood back, Jonathan and I was standing there watching the doctors work, and the main doctor didn't even touch him. He's just directing all the other doctors. And I just felt that protective bubble. I even kept saying to the doctor, well, is he okay now? Is he okay? And he's like, they kept saying, no, your baby's very sick. And the next day when the nurses came back to look at him and tell us how glad they were he was alive, that's when we realized, they didn't really think he was going to make it. Wow. So he had brain bleeds. He had a couple seizures through all that. It was kind of a mess, but I still felt that feeling like being okay long term meant that we believe a lot of his delays come from that episode. And so he's almost 10, but he's in third grade with a full-time aide, and he doesn't do any real third grade work. He's doing his own work in with his peers, but he kind of does his own thing. So he has a lot of his own delays, but the things that he is fabulous at is being social, being loving. He is super smart in his own way. I mean, he beats all my kids' friends at Mario Kart. You know, like you bring them, anybody comes over and they'll be like, "Wait, what?" So that's one. This morning when I was thinking about this, there was a couple things that came to mind, and that was one of them that I wanted to talk about, because it kind of gives you a little bit of background of we started out a certain way, and then certain things happened to prepare us to keep going forward. And so when Ben was 9 months old, to our shock, not dismay, but to our shock, we found out we were pregnant. and we didn't tell anybody for a while, but because we were just like, oh my goodness, we knew we were probably going to have more kids. We felt like we were going to have more kids. Yeah. Just not that soon. Right. And so when he came along, same thing, regular pregnancy. And by this time we thought Ben was probably just a fluke, because we could not find anything wrong technically, even though obviously something was wrong. And feel free to cut me off if this is getting too long.
I love it. I'm so glad you're sharing all of this.
So when I found out I was pregnant with Ty, my first reaction was a little bit of disbelief, but then again, a really strong feeling, this baby is supposed to be here. He's supposed to be here. I got some interesting comments from loved ones about buying us condoms or things like that for the future. So they were just concerned. Our life was crazy, you know. We had all this medical stuff everywhere, and so that whole pregnancy, I was hopeful but worried. You know, like, okay, hopefully this baby's going to be fine. And we went and had him at the same hospital that Ben was transferred to at the end, because we thought, let's just do it just in case. And towards the end of the pregnancy, I did start having extra amniotic fluid again. And it turns out we think it was because they stopped swallowing. And, so when Ty was born, he ended up being an unplanned C-section because he wasn't coming out. He was sunny side up. He just was not coming. He was just not ready to be born. And we also had induced his labor because we wanted to have it some of my babies came really fast, and we didn't want anything to come fast and not be prepared for. So that may have been an aspect of why things didn't progress as well as they could have. But so we ended up having a C-section with him, and I remember Jonathan bringing him to me all wrapped up, and I was there. He brought him to me and showed me him and said, "Look, they think he's fine," and we were so happy. And he left off to go follow him like he always does, and then they moved me to the recovery room, and he kept coming back to check on me, and each time he would have an update. And I could tell from his face, like I would look at his face when he walked in, and he's like, okay, he's not quite responding the way they would like him to. He's a little bit floppy, so they're going to give him a bath. So then he'd go watch that, and then he'd come back again. Okay, they're not sure about how he's swallowing, so they're just watching him. And then finally he came in, and I saw him kind of pause in the door, and I could see him kind of like arranging his face, or like trying to like prepare to talk to me. And he came over and he said, "Honey, Heavenly Father knew we could handle it." And I was just like, okay, all right, I guess we can. So, anyway, so he ended up going up to the NICU, staying in the NICU. And, fortunately for us, and I don't ever question why someone would feel this way, but I'm grateful that even though it's been super hard, and there's been a lot of things really hard, I've never felt like, well, why us, or why me? Because everybody has hard stuff. I know that people have lots of hard things, but I have felt lots of emotions about, I wish things weren't hard for them, or things have changed with my other kids, and all those other feelings. But my husband's been a really good example of just like, okay, this is what we've got. We're going to do it. Let's do it. And even though sometimes I've turned that around on him, like, well, of course it's easy for you. Your life has hardly changed. My life is one side.
You still leave every day.
but so Ty ended up getting a trach and a feeding tube as well, even though from the get-go, he's always been a lot stronger and more resilient than Ben. And he doesn't have any neurological delays or any of that. So he has been a huge blessing because they have each other. Mm-hmm. And he also brings in this whole other element of none of my kids are like him. He is like, boom, in enthusiasm, whether it's good or bad or drama, anything. He just brings a whole other element. So we can't, so obviously I'm so glad he's here, you know. So, but because we have these two little boys that I guess were the twins I'd always wanted, they were doing a lot of the same things as Ty caught up to Ben. And I would even dress them alike, whatever. People always thought they were twins because I made it look like they were. But we were homebound, we just didn't go a lot of places. They got sick a lot the first few years. They got RSV 2 years in a row. And Jonathan spent Christmas in the hospital 1 year with one of them. It's just kind of a crazy, medically challenged road that we were on. And my big kids were they're the ones I worried about the most, right? Like, am I neglecting them? Am I not doing enough for them? And one time I was on the phone with a friend, and I can't remember what I was saying, but I was saying something about something was wrong with Ben. And Scott walked by and he's like, "Are you talking about Ben? Nothing's wrong with Ben. What are you talking about?" And I was like, "You're right. There's nothing wrong with him. He's perfect." And my kids look at them that way. Yeah. And they just thought this is just what we do. And Jack, my 12-year-old, when he was younger, he said, we were playing with Ben or Ty, and he said, "Mom, when I was little and I had my trach, did I do that?" And I was like,
"You didn't."
"No, babies have trachs,
That's so cute.
But so out of life takes you a certain way, and I actually probably never would have started doing a cake business because it was so because it would have required being home so much. Mm-hmm. But I started doing it for friends, and it just kind of snowballed from there. I didn't set out to start doing a business from home, but I've always kind of tried to do something. I mean, I even did a paper out once. I just wanted to not.
Too.
So I'm like, you know what? I just want to not fight every time I go to Target, right? Yeah. Like, I just want to, just Jonathan provides for our family, fine. We're totally fine. But when Ben and Ty came along, the crazy insurance premiums and all that stuff, it got a little crazy. So I thought, well, maybe I can do something with this cake thing. And I just started offering it. I started out as cupcakes. That's why none of my social media matches on Facebook, I'm a Little Delights Cupcakes. But then really I do more cakes now. But I started doing it for friends. And the first few years, I felt like it was kind of it was therapeutic. Mm-hmm. It gave me something to think about other than, the crazy, have I ordered enough supplies? And the boys needed to be where we could see them all the time. Like I never could put them asleep upstairs and come back down. No, they would sleep right around the corner in their bouncer because they couldn't cry. Like you couldn't hear them cry because of their trachs. Yeah. And I think that's one of the, even aside from all the other stuff, that's one of the things that's so sad because their little baby noises, all that, they could be crying really hard. You wouldn't even know unless you could see their face. So
that's so hard.
So what am I going to do? Just sit on the floor by their bassinet all day? No, I just started doing stuff in the kitchen and it ended up being a really kind of a therapeutic thing for me until it started to take over and take up way too much time. And then I had to kind of cut back and figure out what I really like, how to make it work for our family and not be a total drain on me, Yeah.
So how are you managing it now? Now that the kids are a little older, it seems like you're doing great.
It is good. And it's one of those things where I still practice saying no, because especially when it's people you always want to say yes. But since a lot of my I guess customers, you ought to call them, I don't know them all now, so it's easier to say, okay, I can't do it that week, or I can't, And for a while, so when we first got married, we kind of had the mentality of I want to be a stay-home mom, right? And that's what and I want to take care of the kids, and Jonathan agreed too. And so when I started making money, I almost felt like, well, wait, this should just go towards fun stuff, right? Like this should just go towards like stuff that are not bills, or not that kind of thing. And then one day it hit me like, holy cow. Do you think Heavenly Father's blessing you so that you can, I don't know, buy or fix your window? I don't know, stuff that doesn't matter, like fix the house up. Who cares about that? We realized I was making enough to pay all our insurance premiums.
That's amazing.
It wasn't like life-changing money, but it was, like it made life so much less stressful. And then it's still a constant balancing act, because I'm not going to look back and go, oh, I wish I had made like 30 more cakes. Right. I'm gonna be like, I wish I'd spent more time with my kids. And so now they actually go to school. Yeah. So I have time. This is like the second year of no kindergartners. And so I have a little more time during the day, but then it's a different kind of crazy in the afternoon, but that's okay. Yeah. But I will say, for any moms waiting for their kids to be done and be at school all day, it is not that awesome. When Ty started, I was sad. My little errand buddy was gone. He's at school all day. I missed him. So, but times and seasons,
Yeah, that's why I started homeschooling, because I missed Connor too much. The one who's my most difficult child, I was still couldn't even handle him being gone all day.
I love it though. See, I love that. And I actually did homeschool up through middle school and then went to public school for my parents did that, but I haven't had that feeling to do it. So I haven't, but I think if you do, you do.
Right.
So,
exactly. It's not something everybody has to do, but it just was that nagging thing I felt like I was supposed to do. So I'm doing it, even though the other day I was telling Ben, I was like, I remember as a kid looking at my mom's life and being like, I can't wait till I can take my kids to school and then just sit home all day and watch TV and just relax. And I'm like, I had that for about a month and then I decided not to do it.
Right.
Am I doing the right thing?
Were you really just sitting and relaxing?
No.
I'm like still waiting for that day. Oh, when's the day I'm just going to be like, I have nothing to do. I'm going to just watch. I'm going to go to a movie and do nothing. Yeah.
We should just like do that though. We should just declare like a mom's day once a month where we guilt-free either watch Netflix all day or go to a movie in the middle of the day, go shopping. I actually did that one time, probably a year and a half ago. Maybe, I don't know how long ago, a while ago. And I told the kids, I was like, today's mom's day. We had some extra money for some reason or another. It wasn't even a ton. It was just like, we went out, we upgraded my cell phone. I bought myself like 2 necklaces. I didn't go crazy, but it was just like, today is not my birthday, but it's about me. Right. And I'm getting stuff for myself because I always get stuff for you. So I think that's an important thing. I think we should just declare it.
Well, and I do meet friends. Like now I actually can go meet a friend for lunch or, do that kind of stuff, which is actually really nice. So, that's good. Yeah.
Those are amazing perks. And I will say, even though my kids are all home, I mean, Parker still loves preschool, so he goes to preschool, but I still have a husband who can work from home. So it's not like I'm trapped. I still have this awesome bonus
totally works
to be able
for
to
you
leave.
Guys.
Yeah. It works for us really well. So oh my gosh, I loved hearing your story though. I'm really glad you went into that because I wanted you to go there. I wanted to hear everything, even though I've heard bits and pieces of it on Periscope, and I wanted everybody else to hear that because I will never forget you saying to me, the one time we met in person was at a blogger conference. And I remember you saying, because I've been deciding whether to have more kids or not. And you said, I don't regret having any of my kids, even though my last 2 have been the most difficult. I would never change it. And of course, nobody would ever change any of their children. You'd never want to trade them back in. But that was so powerful to me. And that was the moment I was like, I love Beth forever. Oh. Because you just have such...
time, when I wouldn't have said I would choose to have handicapped children. But at the same time, I really wouldn't change. I feel like I'm not the same person, because of it. And I'm so glad, I mean, not like I was a terrible person, but I just feel like I prefer the person that they're helping me become, to some of the things I worried about and some things I cared more about and some of the things that were a little probably too important to me at that time,
Yeah. Keeps it all in perspective of kind of what we're here to do too and how... I love that you that you pumped for a whole year so that he would get the breast milk. That's amazing.
That's where the crazy kind of comes out, though. I mean, it's not like I think he wouldn't have survived in a way, but that was just really important to me. And then with Ty, he only made it 7 months, and I was like, sorry, dude, you're going on to goat milk. or something, but still I tried,
Yeah. That's a mother's
so.
love right there for
Right.
sure.
Right. Yeah.
And that's still making it work for you, even though you had to miss out on the actual breastfeeding part. Still
Right.
feeling like you had a little bit of something to say
Right.
about, their baby
Exactly.
life. Wow.
Exactly. And I really do feel like every sometimes I'll have friends that say, "Oh, I don't want to complain to you," but I think, "Oh, please complain to me," because I don't think my stuff is harder to me than someone else's stuff is harder to them.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like mine's really obvious. And I've had lots of people who reach out to me, who are kind, who love my boys, who did all kinds of service for us those first years. Oh my gosh, I can't even count. But then there's so many people struggling that have things that aren't obvious, and nobody knows, and nobody knows that it's so. I just think you need to approach people like they have something, that don't feel like someone else's life is just awesome in every aspect. But at the same time, I do feel like my life is pretty awesome. I feel like I am one of the things and it's, again, this is like a work in progress, but I really feel like I really feel like I'm happy even when my emotions are all over the place. Like I feel like in my core, I know I'm solid, but doesn't mean I'm not going to yell at my kids. Doesn't mean but I feel like it's part of this, like, I'm trying to do, I had a reaction to something, an emotional reaction that I didn't like. And I just thought, so this whole month I've been trying to do a gratitude challenge just for myself and find something every day. And really, not just little things like, ooh, chocolate, because I like that too, but like something that is like reminding me, because I feel like finding, it's like Elder Bednar from our church. He gave a really good talk on tender mercies. And I just cannot say enough how important that is to think about, because I felt like it's almost like you walk into your house, like imagine walking into your house every day and finding something to be grateful for. When you look around and see stuff you're so used to seeing, you don't even see it anymore.
Yeah.
But then if someone took away your dishwasher, boy, you'd miss that. Or that's something you're really grateful for. Yeah. So I feel like it's like it's something you really have to practice and work on. But as I've been doing that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so blessed. Even though, people always say, oh, you're so patient. And I'm like, ask my husband if he thinks that.
Ask my kids.
Ask my kids. Why do you think my daughter yells? She learned that from me, So
I love that.
Yeah.
I think you have a great perspective. And I think that's a really important thing to point out. If nothing else, like that's the most significant message from everything that you've said. Like my suffering, my struggles are pretty obvious. What about the people who are suffering in silence, And don't be afraid to comfort somebody. And also, like, I've had that same thing with like friends who have had infertility issues. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I won't talk about this to you. Or I tell them it's okay to complain about your kids, even though you fought so hard to have them. It's okay to still be human,
Yes.
You're allowed.
There's that automatic, like that's one thing I'm working on is, I some of the things that make me sad have to do with my little boys who are the loves of my life, and so there's that guilt that comes, like, I love them so much, so why do I feel sad about this situation, or why do I feel sad about this? I wouldn't trade them. I love them, but we're human, and that's why I think the other day I thought about a quote that I can't remember who said it, but it's that you're not responsible for the first thought, but for every thought that follows. So you have a reaction. Okay, don't kick yourself a million times because you were jealous or angry or sad or reacted in a way you weren't proud of. Yeah. But then what? Then what are you going to do? Then do something about it. Don't let it fester. And there are days I've let it fester. I've totally let it fester, and I want to wallow a little bit, and
Human
and that's
nature.
okay too. But I don't want to be the person who stays there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's interesting you say that too, because I just barely this weekend was at the Pinners conference, and my friend Becky.
Oh, that looks so fun.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
She gives a speech called Girl in Progress, and part of what she says in there, and sorry, Becky, I'm totally quoting you on this episode, but she says, did you really have a bad day, or did you have a bad 5 minutes that you milked all day long?
I love that. I saw that.
Was that on my Facebook? Yeah.
Yes, that was so good.
Is that not so true? It totally put me in my place, and I'm like, oh my gosh, really? How often is it one thing that we choose to give into all day long?
Yeah. Exactly.
And same with life experiences, right? Like, okay, so you had a bad month. how long are you going to let that be your story before you move on and start focusing on the things that are actually really good and wonderful in your life, you know? Right. So I love that so much.
And then who can you empathize with because you had that moment? Doesn't mean you have to stay there, but then someone else will feel that, and you can go, hey, I have, you know, I feel for you, and you can reach out to them in a way you wouldn't have been able to.
Yeah.
Before, you know, so I mean, it's easy to say all these things and to put them into practice. You know, that's why I'm constantly working on it. But that's, I mean, that's the whole point, right? I mean, that's what we're doing.
Exactly. It's so true. I would love to talk to you all day, every day. And I love you so much for sharing pieces of your story. There's a long period there where I was pretty quiet because I was fighting back my tears listening to your story because any mother can empathize with that. I can't imagine not holding my baby for 3 days. My sister just had a C-section and couldn't hold him for like 30 minutes, and it was so hard for her.
Right.
So I love you for opening up like that and sharing the most tender moments of your motherhood. And I just hope you know that you're such an example to me, and you're somebody that I love to watch and who I consider so lucky to be a friend, because I truly think you're the epitome of marvelous. I feel the same way.
Yeah, you're just like... many people probably feel this way about you, but I just feel like you're one of my good friends. And I was thinking everybody probably feels that way about you because you're so personable and reaches out, and you just reach people in a way that's, I just love it. I love you. So it's great. So Jonathan said this morning, he said, oh, no Periscope anymore lately, huh? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, was it a waste of time? I'm like, no.
Never.
Are you kidding?
No regrets.
All these friends, I have such great, you know, I wouldn't know these people otherwise. Yeah. So I'm so glad. Yeah.
Me too. And I will come and visit you one of these days very soon. I think that'd be so fun.
Good.
I need to ask you the question, even though I feel like you've answered it this whole time. What makes you a marvelous mom?
You know what? When I think about that question, I think the thing that makes me a marvelous mom is that my kids know I love them. Mm-hmm. I have lots of mom guilt over things I'm not doing, but Elder Bednar said when he came here to visit, he said, can you tell he's one of my favorites? Because I keep quoting him. He said, perfection is being complete, not making mistakes. And I feel like my kids know completely that I love them no matter what. Yeah. And I think that's makes me a marvelous mom. I think if your kids know you love them, I don't know what else really matters in the same, because it all boils down to that, right? Mm-hmm. Do they know you think they are amazing and wonderful? And one of my favorite quotes, I think it was Maya Angelou was on Oprah, you know, and she said, when your children walk in the room, do your eyes light up? Or do you look at them and go, your hair, your whatever? And I started practicing that when my kids were little, and even in the morning when they come down, good morning. Oh, I'm glad to see you. I mean,
I love
but
that.
meaning it and just like, I want them to know they are my world, because they are, you know. Yeah. Sorry, husband. You're in there too somewhere.
He helped you make them, so he's naturally part of the mix.
Baby daddy, that's right.
Another reason why I love you. Yeah. I needed that reminder too. I need to do that. I'm sure right now with how busy we are, I give them too many of the looks of like, why are you interrupting me again?
Yeah.
Mom guilt, dang it. Well, I think you're wonderful.
Thank you. And I know there's a lot of people want to hear business stuff, but I just felt like the things I wanted to talk about were things that matter most to me, you know. And
it's whatever you want to share. It has nothing to do with what needs to be shared or what people want, because you never know how your message is going to touch or help somebody who needs to hear exactly what you have to share. I had somebody email me the other day who was like, I know this, this person has a really great story, but they don't have a big Instagram following. And I'm like, I'm going to tell you guys listening right now, that is not a prerequisite to being on this podcast. It's just not.
So that's good. Yeah.
You just have to be brave enough to tell a story. And usually the people who are on here have touched my heart in some way, and I need them to be on here to touch other people's. So that's the only prerequisite, being totally yourself, being honest, being, having something that you feel like needs to be shared. So just had to put that out there. So I'm so grateful that you shared what you did, because I think that's the most important, is sharing what you feel needs to be shared. So
okay, good.
Thank you, Beth. You're amazing.
Thank you. I know. Call me every day.
I will. Yes. I wish I had time to call all my people every day.
I know.
That's why I get on Facebook Live. But then I miss out on hearing about your life too. So get back on Periscope once a week.
Right. I know. That should be the goal.
Seriously. All right. Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you, Beth, for being here. And we will see you on the next episode. Have a marvelous day.